1994 Mercury, 115 horsepower. The boat is under renovation. I am currently getting it ready for the water. I am going to be changing out the impeller today and making sure that the thing is functioning right, so we'll go step by step on that and make sure she's getting enough water to keep cool. So let's get at it. First thing you got to do, make sure your motor is full tilt up. That way when you pull this lower unit out, the lower unit will actually have a long drive shaft that goes all the way up to the motor. You got to have enough room to clear so we don't bend it, ding it. You don't want to do anything to it. You're going to take, there's 4 bolts holding the lower unit on. These bolts are a 15 millimeter. Do not take them all the way out. Loosen them up. Get them down to the end of the near the end of the threads. Leave a couple on, and that's when you want to start working the lower unit loose. It will be pretty stuck. Well, it should be anyway, because it is a tight fitting. So yeah, you want to make sure that you get those loosened up. If you need to hit them with some PB Blaster, something along those lines, and let them soak for a bit, but mine were pretty easy to come off. No effort there. So the next step I will do is get the lower unit off. Don't go hitting it with a hammer, a sledgehammer. Get a rubber mallet, block of wood, you know, if you're gonna have to, you know, hit it pretty good, but be gentle with it. You don't want to break anything. Get to also show there is another bolt underneath. So if you look up underneath here, there's another bolt, so you're gonna take that one off too. One of the main things you want to do also right before you make sure to put it in gear so that when you put the thing back together, you won't have to turn the flywheel inside the housing of the motor. This will keep from having to do that. All right, so this is why you want to make sure that you leave the unit screws in right here, so that when you get it separated, you won't have any issues with it like falling down and breaking. So everything looks pretty straight, pretty good, pretty clean. So this tube right here is the water water tube, water hose. It allows water to get up into the engine to stay cool. So you want to make sure that that's there and in good working order, and it looks good. So a lot of times it'll come out and it'll actually be, you know, you can pull it right out, and then it'll actually be stuck to the lower unit. But when I pulled it out, it was still stuck in its original place. So just you pull it out and make sure you put it back on. But you know, you put it, you can put it on the lower unit before you put the whole thing together. So I went ahead and I didn't have a vise, but I went ahead and just built this thing. Again, it's a 94 Mercury, 115 horsepower, and if it's a 5 inches wide by 15 internal, and it allowed me to just set this in here. I actually, you know, put it to my tool bench, and I can take it off when I'm done. So it's just, I didn't want to have to go buy a vise, so I just built a holder. So if you don't have a vise, that would be the next best option. So the parts we're going to be replacing, I get from boats.net. They have a very good variety of parts, and pretty much can get anything you need for, especially for the older motors. So this part, it's actually a little bit better of a view of it. You'll see is the gasket, the top gasket, goes underneath the housing. There'll be a plate underneath that. The plate goes this gasket, and that is that part. Then, obviously, we've got the impeller here, and that is the part for the impeller. A couple other things you will need: marine grease. Unfortunately, where I bought this, they did not have the little squeeze tubes. They only had these, so it'll be a little bit messier, but it'll work. You'll either need, the blue RTV or the black RTV. I'm going to try and use the black RTV, but we'll see if it's still good. I've had it for a little bit, so should be fine, but we'll see. So the first thing we're going to do, obviously you can see where the water tube hooks on. We're going to go ahead and pull these bolts, and then we're going to slide this up and off the shaft, and then go from there. The top bolts are 10 millimeter. It looks like these are going to be 10 millimeter as well. So pretty straightforward. Right, so you can see I've got the bolts out. They had a little bit of silicone and thread locker on them, but they're out. As soon as I pulled it off, it's a very easy move. So you can hear the key. There's a little key thing, and I'm gonna have to get it. But it goes in the keyway, and it came out simple, super easy. Unfortunately, now I gotta get it, but I gotta get a little magnet. Anyway, so yeah, you slide the whole housing all the way up, and off, and there's your impeller, and it is shot, as you can see. Whoever had this motor did not take care of this motor. You can see no gasket. It's pretty sad. So somebody obviously got in here and was like, oh crap, and I don't know what I'm doing, and then just put it all back together, hoping that it would not be an issue. But it obviously was. So I noticed that when I fired it up that it was barely spitting out water out of the ejection port, the rooster tail. And yeah, so here we are. So we'll be obviously replacing that. I got to get the key. It fell down inside, and then we'll be good to go. All right, so that's this is the part we're looking for. What this does, it actually goes right in here before we put. I'm sorry, it goes right in here before we actually put it back together. Take a little of the marine grease, put the marine grease on here, and it'll actually hold it in place like that while we put the impeller back down. But yeah, so little side note, if get you a magnet just in case you drop it down in there. It fell down into the abyss, and just poke it around in there, and it ended up catching on it and pulling it right out. So we've got to take next, this plate comes off, and then underneath that there's a gasket, as you can see down here, and it is crappy. So that'll be coming off, and then yeah, so we should be good to go once that's off. So you'll want to kind of scrape it down with a razor blade gently. You don't want to scratch the surface. You want to make sure it seals properly. The impeller comes out really easy. I mean, for me it did, so maybe, who knows, somebody might have issues with it. But you want to make sure in here, so that's the ejection port for the water, obviously, that then it goes up the tube, the water tube, and then goes up into the motor. Once that, you know, but if you've got anything in here, inside this housing, that looks like it could easily damage the impeller, it is only rubber. It is rubber around a metal ring. So you got the metal inside, and then you have the rubber on the outside. This is only rubber. You can see I can move it with my thumb very easily. So if it is at all damaged inside the housing, if there's any score marks, anything that does not look smooth, like this thing is like glass smooth, so won't have any problems putting it back together. So, and it should work perfect the rest of the time. Well, until the next time we have to replace it when it gets old. So a little side by side, you can see obviously new and old. So I'm not really sure why that one looks like, you know, it's got issues with the one side, and yeah, I'm not really sure what the deal is there. Maybe it's just the way it was sitting in there, but yeah, so that's the new one. We'll put it inside the housing and then get it put back together. So this plate actually has an up and a down surface. The up surface, if you get in here and you can actually feel that the edges are rounded off. They're not sharp. Underneath, you can see that they are indeed pretty sharp edges. So it must be installed with the rounded edges up. The gasket obviously is going to come off, and then we got to clean underneath it. It's pretty nasty. It's been on there for quite some time. Looks like somebody obviously messed with the impeller, but did not complete the process properly. So we're going to clean this off, put the gasket back on, put this back on with the rounded sides up. All right, so we got it cleaned off. It's nice and smooth. I don't feel any burrs or anything that might cause issues. So we will take this gasket, which is that part number. And again, this is a 1994 Mercury 115 horsepower. And that is the under the plate gasket. I'm going to go ahead and call it the water pump plate. I don't know exactly what the name is. It just but yeah, it's the bottom plate underneath the housing of the impeller. Okay, so the gasket is symmetrical. It does not have an up or down, so it can go on either way. One side's got lettering and the other side does not. We're going to go ahead and put that on, and then we've got the plate. Again, rounded sides up. And we're going to just go ahead and slide that down over. Slide it all the way down. You know, be gentle. We don't want to scratch the drive shaft or anything, or dent it, ding it. Just no sense in that. Okay, so she's ready to go there. All the holes line up. Everything's good to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the impeller and the housing together. When you put the impeller inside this, you're going to spin it counterclockwise. Before we do that, we're going to put a little bit of the marine grease, just a light coating inside here. It's going to lubricate from the startup the first time, not metal on rubber. It'll have a little bit of lubrication inside here. Not a lot, just enough to coat it, just a very light coating, just to give it make it a little bit slick. Then we will go ahead and put the gasket underneath here. On mine, it definitely has a way to go on that lines up better. Mine comes with, and I don't know if they all come with this, but they come with it looks like a little bit of rubber gasket material on top of the paper gasket. It then sits like that. That will go back onto here, and then we'll put the 10mm bolts back in. So this is what it looks like after putting it into the housing. Again, slide it in counterclockwise, and that will spin the proper direction once you put it on the drive shaft. Go ahead and put the gasket on. Obviously I have to put it in place there. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and where that key goes, the keyway, you'll see right here it's a flat spot, right on the shaft. That key literally fits right inside there. So you'll want to put a little bit of grease on it so it'll hold it. And then, but this is where the keyway actually sits. So just inside, just like that. Okay? Right, like that. Okay, so you can see, obviously, got a little bit of marine grease on it. What you want to do is before you drop the housing down, you're going to want to have something like a long screwdriver, a little